Good morning. Good morning. If you could go ahead and smash that like button and consider subscribing to my channel. I'm trying to reach my 1,000 subscribers. Anyway, I wanted to come on here and talk about mental illness again. I made a shorts the other day talking about mental illness, and like my father, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia in 1985 and the effects that it had on us. After I made that video, I've seen so many other people, but like two or three, like back to back, talking about mental illness and how it's affecting them now. I saw this young lady, her sister has just gone off, and she's saying different things, and you can tell it's mental illness. And it's sad because if you're just now experiencing it, it could take you for a loop. I experienced it with my dad in 1985. At that time I was 16 years old, and it was scary because you're like, what in the, you just didn't understand. And another lady, she's 35, and she's dealing with it with her mom. And her mom, she said that she has been dealing with it as long as she can remember. She said her grandmother raised her. Her mother has been in and out of, in her life, but if they go off on from their medication, then it's out of their life again. Just like my dad. My dad used to do a lot of things that, clearly you could tell that it was mental illness. I remember one time I was part of a military family. My first husband, he was in the military, and so we were living in Texas. So it's a lot of things that I wasn't privy to. I can remember one time we had just moved back from Texas, and we got a phone call that somebody had been unalive in my dad's yard. And because of his history, we thought he had done it, and I was sick to my stomach and everything. And so I go to his house, and he's not there. They had said they had put him in jail and everything. And we didn't know why, what was going on. But it's a really small town, and everybody knew him. And they had put him in jail because he was drunk. And they had put him in just for the night to keep him safe, too. But he didn't do it. It was another situation that had happened. And so I say that because it'll have you on a roller coaster. Mental illness it takes a toll on families. And like I said before in another video, it takes a toll on families, and the system won't do anything unless the person is a harm to themselves or others. As many weird things as we think they're doing, that's their protocol. They won't do anything unless they feel like the person is a threat to someone else or themselves. And that's it. And so when you see those situations, because I know people used to ask about us, where's the family? They don't come visit him. They don't do this. They don't do that. And we tried so many things for my dad. Even before he had an episode, we would try things, because we could kind of tell. If you've been around mental illness for a certain period of time, you can kind of tell when they're about to have an episode, when they've been off of their medication. And my sister made me realize my daddy would have a slurred speech, and I didn't realize it. We would talk to him, and she would say, okay, he about to go off. Sure enough, probably about 3 or 4 days later, he would have an episode. He had one episode where he literally, someone called us and told us that he was walking down the street with just a towel on, going up and down the street. They still don't do anything except you need to go back in the house. And he would say, yeah, I'm okay, stuff like that. And they wouldn't do anything. And I get it to a certain extent because everybody is not mentally ill. Some people are just weird. Some people just do things. I understand to a certain extent, but they should start doing something, or the system should start doing something once you have a history. Now, my dad had a history of it since 1985, and he never did anything to anyone per se, unless, like they would, we could have him committed if they actually saw him Well, he wasn't really committed. He was just taken away for like, sometimes it was supposed to be for 3 days, but sometimes it wasn't even that, because he would be right back out. If the doctor came in and said, ask him a few questions, the next thing you know, he's back out. I can remember one time I I had went to, my mom was sick at this time, and my dad, he had an episode, and I was in the emergency room. My mom on one side, because she had gotten sepsis, and I was in the emergency room for her, and then they brought my daddy in on the other side because he had not taken his medication. He had went off and stayed into a hotel and wasn't paying the money. He wasn't going to pay, and he had went off. He had to stop taking his medication for whatever reason, stopped taking his medication, and he went and checked in the hotel, and I think he had enough money for a couple of days. And then I think like the next, they wanted him out. But he started saying all this off the wall stuff. I went in there to see him. He had a photocopy of the Eiffel Tower. I don't know how he got it. I don't know, but the Eiffel Tower was upside down, and he kept saying, look at this is strange. Of course I knew what it was. I had brought a friend with me, and my dad literally stood right beside me and was like whispering, who is that, who is that person? And he knew him, but he was like that, and it was awful to see. It's awful to see your loved one, talking like that and being out of their head, so to speak, just like all these incidents of people doing things. Now, they're going to jail or in mental institutions where they still should be evaluated. When, if they have a history, they should be evaluated. And all of these things that are happening, these people now are coming out and saying they had a mental history. They had a history of this. I'm like, come on, come on. I think so many people could have been saved. If you have a mental history, we have to evaluate you. I mean, really evaluate you for the 3 days. We just have to, because it is that serious. Life depends on it. Thank God my dad never did anything hurtful to anyone. We did have a few episodes. He came home one day when I probably was 18, and he said, I unalived somebody. I did it. I unalived her. It was like, what in the world? He said they were out in a cornfield, and he unalived her in a cornfield. And it was so crazy sounding, but I was scared too, because I didn't know. At the time we were still dealing with it and everything. And like 10 minutes later, the police show up. And that really, had our hearts sinking. It was like, what in the world? My mom didn't know what to do. Why he was at the gas station and he didn't pay for the gas. And they came to get him, to tell him to pay for the gas. It's like I said, it's a little small town that we grew up in, but he had not unalived anybody. But with situations like that, you just do not know. There was another incident where my sister, she was about 5 or 6 years old. My daddy walked 5 miles to a store with her. He said that his mama had taken him on a walk. That's what I'm saying about mental illness. And somebody called my brother and told him that my dad and my sister was sitting out in front of the store. My sister, she didn't know any better. She was, 5 or 6 years old, however old she was. But I'm just saying, please. And people often ask, where's the family? We can't the family cannot do anything. Listen, maybe God wanted me to go through that so I wouldn't have that where's the family mentality. But I know all too well. We tried to help my dad so many times. And if the system feels like he's competent enough, guess what? He's competent enough. I can remember the last episode a couple of years ago before he passed, he called my husband. My husband and I had been married about 8 years. And he called my husband on a Sunday. I will never forget this. He called my husband on a Sunday morning. And because he loved my husband. They had a great relationship. He would call my husband before he called me, or he called me asking me where he was. But he called and told my husband that he needed to watch me. He said, "You need to watch your wife because she just wants your money." And my husband, they had a conversation about it. You better watch it because she just wants the money, right? My husband comes out of the back bedroom and said, "You won't believe this." And I said, "What?" And he told me, and I just sat there. I was like, but you know what? I was not upset because I knew he was going on. I knew he was having an episode. I knew that. And I was like, and I think my sister or somebody took him to the doctor. I don't know if his prescription wasn't filled or he just didn't take it. I don't know what the situation was. But, even when it happens, though, when something like that happens, your flesh, can take control sometimes because my feelings were hurt, and so he called me about 3 days later and stuff like that. But I was busy. I was busy at work, and he left me a voicemail and he told me he was sorry. He told me he was very sorry because they know what they're doing in and out. It comes in, it comes out, and that's why it's hard too for you to know, like I think it's hard for the doctors to know whether they are telling the truth or not. We know, as a family, we know, no, they're about to go off. Yeah, they're in and out because they can tell you some truths. But he left a voicemail and told me that he was really sorry. And I didn't get a chance to call him back for like a day or two. He left another voicemail and said, "I hope you ain't mad with me. Call me back. Call me." And I did. I called him back and I told him I was not upset with him because I understand. I understand. And but I'm just saying, keep these people in prayer. If you have a family member that you are dealing with or helping out with or whatever the case may be, just keep whoever it is, keep them in prayer. Keep the families in prayer because it's not easy. It is heartbreaking. It's tiring. It's exhausting. And it's supposed you're only child. You have to deal with, or if you are a parent who's dealing with a child, who have mental illnesses, it's hard. I pray for their peace because I know what they're going through and it's awful. It is, oh, it's so awful. It is so tiring. Anyway, I just wanted to come on here and talk about it. A lot of people don't talk about it. They don't talk about it enough, because the system don't do anything and you feel so hopeless. You feel so hopeless. But I think I'm open for suggestions on. I mean, my dad has passed away, but is there something else that we could possibly do to really make a change? Not just talk about it. Like I said, if there's a history, maybe I should look into that. If there's a history, what can be done? Because clearly they have a mental illness. Clearly they're going to have to be evaluated for a longer period of time. Think about the people that were unalive because of this. It is awful. It is awful. Anyway, let's keep these people in prayer. Have a great day.